everybody, and welcome back to our online 3D design class. Today I'm going to show you how to get started on your first part of your bag. And here are the things that you're going to need today. You're going to need your loom, your sketch for your project, the color of yarn that you want for that first bottom part of your project, a pen, a marker, a pencil, whichever, your needle, and don't worry if you don't have one of these, I have a video of how to make one, and you're also going to need a fork. Don't worry, I'll explain this in a second. Now, before we get started, I want you to visualize that your loom is going to become your bag. So what's going to happen is when we're all done, we're going to remove the cardboard from here and you're going to be left with your amazingly wonderful bag. I'll show you how to do this, and it kind of starts to mess with you a little bit, but pretty much what's going to happen is you have your warp threads, right? Those are what are on your loom. And your weft, that's the pattern that you're going to make. So those warp threads, let me see if I can find them here inside this bag. You might be able to just see them. So my warp threads in this bag, they're that light purple. You can like just see right there. And then my design are the weft. It's what I'm actually going to weave. So while you're working on your loom, you're going to be weaving from the front and then coming around because you're creating the bag. So that's what I want you guys to think about while we're working today. Before we get started, I want you to first take a look at your sketch. This is going to help us as we map out our bag. Now, before we get started, what we're going to want to do is actually take a look at our sketch. So here's my sketch for my project. We need to know where to stop, really. Like, for instance, everyone's going to start off with about 1 inch of tabby, and then you might change. You might move on to something else. Or maybe you have where that color is going to stop and a new color is going to start. What we need to do is kind of just draw what's going to happen here. So that way while we're working, we don't have to keep looking back at our sketch and looking back at what we're going to do. So the first thing we're going to do is draw that inch at the bottom. Everyone's going to start off with about 1 inch of tabby. So I'm going to get my marker. You don't have to measure it. You know, it's not, going to be horrifically hard. You just want to do like about from your knuckle to the top of your finger. That's about 1 inch. You can kind of guesstimate. It doesn't have to be really high, but it has to be like that inch. And if you can tell, I'm kind of just like going through the warp threads. And I'm just going all the way across. I'm actually getting a little too high. Make it a little bit lower. There we go. So not a perfect estimate, but, just to remind me where to stop because I'm going to just do that much tabby. Okay, so now on my sketch, after my tabby, I'm going to do this crazy little, like, mountain range. Before I start dropping that in, my bag is going to be a little bit different. Remember, my cardboard is 10 inches tall. So it's a tall cardboard. But the bag part, the part that I actually use, is only 6.5 inches. This extra piece is something that's going to like flap over the front of my bag. So I actually need to measure when to stop, when this part of the bag is going to stop on the front. So I'm going to get my ruler. You probably don't have to do this, but I do, so that way I don't lose what I'm trying to do. So my whole bag from the bottom to the top is going to be 6.5. So I need to make a line right here. And Now again, you guys probably aren't doing this. You're probably just doing a straightforward bag. So you're going to go all the way to the top. All the way to the top of your bag. So your bag's probably going to look like this. So it's like a normal bag. And you're just going to weave all the way. I want to do something unique. Something a little challenging because you know that's how I am. So I'm going to draw my line going across right here. Now, since this is a bag, so let me write down right here, tabby. Tabby, so I know. I put tabby right there so I don't forget what I'm doing. So since this is a bag, this bag is going to go from the back. So I'm going to have to make a little mark right there as well. For me, since this is, so here's the back of my bag, here's the front of my bag, so everything's gonna go in, and here's the back. Now, with my sketch, I'm gonna have this fold over, this raya kind of like fold on top of the bag, and so I have to actually draw that back here, because I have to remember that I have this particular design, so I'm gonna go from the edge and kind of do that little rainbow thing. So I remember that's going to fold. So something kind of like that. Okay, so there's my fold over. That's the back of my bag, because it's going to be a different color too. So the front of my bag, I'm going to look and do this little wave thing. So I have, how many am I trying to get in there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe. So I don't know if I'll be able to fit all that in there, but I'm going to try. Okay, so this is going to be down. And then I'm going to have it come up. And just like before, I'm going to put tabby. And also write the color. You know, you want to know when to stop one color, start a new color. So over here, I'm just going to put blue, because this is both of these are going to be blue for me. So then from up here, I'm going to kind of have this little wave go this way. And this is actually going to be raya. And it's going to be purple. So now I know when to stop that one. Okay, so I'm going to start tabby. And again, I'm just looking at my sketch. So my sketch is telling me kind of like where to put what. So I just have this off to the side so I can check that out as I draw. Make some interesting curves. It's a little mountain range, and this is going to be tabby. It's going to be blue, like my warp threads. And then I have some more raya coming at ya. And this is actually going to be another little mountain range. This is going to be raya. Oh, raya, purple. Purple. And then it looks like I only have that much left. So I'm just probably just going to end. I'm going to end on tabby. I thought I could get one more in. Tabby, blue. So now I'm not writing anything up here because my bag is going to stop. So if this was a normal bag, so here's like the top of this bag. The top of my bag is going to be right here, because on the back, I have this piece that I still need to do, and it's going to flap over. It's going to fold over. Now, I haven't drawn on the back. Draw on the back. I know we didn't talk about the back, but you kind of just follow the marks that you just drew, to kind of get that going. So that way this matches the back. So that way this matches how the back looks. You don't want it to have this cool design and then your back is stripes. So I'm just going to do that very quickly right now. Make that a little bit cooler. Yeah, it looks good. So this is tabby, just like the front. Okay. So here's my Raya. And I'm not making like really, really sharp designs. Like, for instance, let's say you're going to do a diamond. Just know that's not going to be like super sharp. Like, you can get it pretty good, but I'm not trying to lose my mind either with this. Oh, I forgot to write what these are. Okay, so tabby. So this must be Raya. Purple. This is tabby blue. So now I have Raya. So from Raya. And this is going to be tabby again. Blue. So now this part, my fold over is actually going to be gold, and it's Raya. So this is also Raya, but now this one's my goldish brownish thread. Okay, so now we have our game plan, what we're doing, what we were doing, how we're doing it. So now let's talk about getting some yarn. Now let's start weaving. Woo! So first things first, we're gonna need to get some yarn. The first color that I'm starting with on my bag is my blue. And so I'm going to find the tail. Remember, don't just start chopping into your yarn. And I'm actually gonna get enough yarn where I can hold it in one hand and then stretch my arms out. You can't really see this, but I'm stretching my arms out. Ideally, this is as much yarn as you need. Now, what's going to happen is that you're going to repeat this step. There's going to be starting and stopping and starting and stopping. And so I know I'll have some of you, my little darlings, and you're going to want to get a lot of yarn. You're not going to want to stop. You're like, okay, this will take this much. I'm going to get this much yarn. I'm going to get a lot. You can, but it's very much a pick your poison. It's kind of like when we were doing our sock monsters. And getting a lot of thread means you don't have to stop, but knots will start to happen, especially with yarn. So yarn is made up of these little fibers that are twisted. And so because you're pulling it through your warp threads, it slowly starts to break that yarn apart. And I'll start to like untwist them and they'll get a little crazy. So I always say 2 arm lengths. You can always adjust. You can feel, oh, maybe that's too little bit. Maybe you want just a little bit more. You decide, but just know that if you get a lot, it might start knotting on you, and then you're gonna get super frustrated. It's not gonna be worth it. It's not gonna be worth just starting and stopping. I never mind that, but some people do. Before we get started on our weaving of tabby, I did want to talk to you guys really quickly about the needle. This is just to help you while you weave. I'm going to use this. You're going to see me every once in a while. This like corner of the tape will like catch on the warp threads, and it starts to drive me crazy. Usually I'll just like chop off this corner so it's a little bit more sleek. It's not such a square edge. A lot of people will do this project with their fingers. I have nails, so that tends to not be easy for me. There's also weaving needles, and so they kind of look like this. They're a big giant plastic needle. I didn't have enough for everyone to give out to you guys, but if you live at home and you know someone who does a lot of crafting or crocheting, they might actually have one of these, and these are nice because they have a really nice big eye, and you just weave in and out of your loom. I'm going to be using this for all of our demos, but when I start working on my project, I'm going to switch over to this one. It's a little bit bigger. I don't mind how you weave, but you're going to need something to help it speed it along a little bit faster. So now that we have our yarn that we're going to use, we're going to start doing our first weave technique. Again, everyone has to do this. You're not alone. I always like to fix my warp threads, that way they're not, going crazy all over. Again, we're all doing tabby. For my bag, my weft and my warp are the same color. So this is going to be a little bit challenging for you to see. So I'm actually going to switch looms. I have my practice loom right here, so you guys can see. And then I'm actually going to use this green thread, so that way it shows up a little bit better when we get started. So you're going to need to grab your needle. Again, if you don't have a needle, or you didn't pick one up from school when we left, you can make one. I have a video on how to make one. Get one of your ends, and you're going to thread it through your needle, just like we did before. So I'm going to get my thread. This should be a little bit easier than before. Unlike our sock monster, I want you to tie a knot. Like, this needs to not fall off. It's going to drive you crazy if it does. So I'm going to cross it over, and I'm going to get this little tail. I'm going to put it through the loop, and pull, 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 pull. So that's one. That's not a knot yet, so I need to do it one more time. So again, I get my yarn, I do a little X, right? I cross it over, and then I'm going to get that tail. It's going to go through the loop, pull, 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 and you want it tight. When you need to stop or get more yarn, you'll just cut this off and then put on some new yarn. So here's my needle. It's ready to go. Now I'm going to get the other end of my thread, the other tail, and now I'm actually going to attach it to my loom. So what we're going to do, and this is how you're always going to start and stop with your project, is I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit. So with your loom, again, these drive me crazy if they are weird looking. You're going to tie a knot to one of these threads. Now, what I always try to do is you don't want to do any on the sides. So usually I'll just ignore like the 5 closest to the ends of the board. And so all of these warp threads are fine to tie a knot to. It doesn't really matter as long as you tie a knot to it. So I'm just going to pick one at random. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer so you can see how I'm tying the knot. Yes. Super zoomed in. Now what I'm going to do is I need to tie it to the thread. I need this to be knotted on there so it stays there. So I'm going to get this thread in, okay. I'm going to put my tail underneath. Okay, it's underneath. Give myself enough yarn to work with. I hate having too little bit because then, especially with my nails, I'm not able to make the knot. So just like before, I have my yarn, okay, and I'm going to cross it over. Again, I'm just making a knot. For those of you that get this, go ahead. Crossing it over, I'm going to get this tail. It's going to go through that loop. Okay. And then I'm going to pull, 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 pull. Now this is not a knot. This is not a knot yet. We just did this once. We want to do it twice. So do it again. I'm going to get my tail. Okay. And I'm going to go across, make like a little X. Then my tail is going to go from the back. It's going to go through that loop. And then I pull, 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 pull. Super tight. So now it's stuck on there. You want to knot it on the warp threads. So what you should see is one end of your yarn has your needle and the other end is actually knotted to your warp thread. It doesn't matter which way you start when we do this, the tabby. What does matter is that you continue that way. So I always just go to the right, but let's say you're like, I want to go to the left. That's fine. Just from the whole bag, it's just easier if you continue that way. I naturally just go to the right. Now, before we get started on the weave, let's reflect what the tabby weave looks like, okay? So the tabby weave is actually where you have your warp threads and your weft threads are going over and under, over and under, over and under your warp threads. So for mine, my warp threads are white. My weft thread is green. And so to do the tabby technique, I'm going to get my needle. Again, you guys work however you want. I like to turn my stuff sideways because it just makes sense in my brain. And how I want to do this weave is however you want to start. You can go under and then over, under, over, or you can start over, under, over, under. You're just repeating that same pattern. Over, under, over, under, over, under. So here's my knot. I'm actually going to start under this one. So I'm going to go under. And then I like to do weaving very quickly. So my needle's going under the thread. Let me zoom in a little bit more so that it makes. So my needle is going under the thread. It's going to go over this one. It's going to go under this one and over this one. So I'm going to pull this through so you can see it. Pull, 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 pull. Yep, other tail. So you see it's going like, so right now, here's my knot, and I started under, then my weft, my green weft thread went over, and then it went under, and now it's going to go over. And I'm just going to continue this pattern all the way. So I'm going over this one, under, over, under, over, under. And with this needle, I can only do like so much, so I kind of go as much as I can before I have to. Okay, so I started under, so this one has to be over, under, over, under, over. So now this is also why you don't want to get too much thread in the beginning. You're going to lose your mind. Don't lose your mind. Let me zoom out again. Now, as you pull your thread through, what tends to happen is where you started will pull as well. Just make sure to bring it back. Like this, you're not trying to move your warp threads too much. Okay, but you can clearly see the pattern now. So I have under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. Now this is the bag. So this is my front of my bag, and now I'm going to switch to the back. But this pattern has to continue. So I left off on over. My green weft thread is going over my white warp thread. So if I'm following this pattern, after over is under. So I'm going to flip, get my needle, and now I'm going under, over, under, oops, over, under, over, under, over, under. Also, make sure that you're not going inside the thread. Like, I know this seems silly right now, but it will kill you later on. So just be careful that your paper clip isn't going into the thread. It's not going inside the warp, that you're really just going underneath it. Okay. So let's see, I did under, so this one's over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. So now I have under, so over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. Make sure I didn't mess up. Over, under, over, under, over, under, over. All my yarn through. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, so same thing. I left off on over, so when I flip, I need to do under. Under, over, 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 under. I'm gonna, oops, under, over, under. Now, I'm going to stop right here just for a second because we're about to come back to where we started. So now this isn't super tricky, but it's something that you really need to pay attention to. So I'm going to zoom in again. So what you want to make sure is that your pattern is continuing. When it gets here, it needs to be opposite of what you have below. So for instance, right now, my weft is going to go over this one, under, and then over. So over, under, and now I have to make sure it goes opposite. Perfect, it does. So I'm going to go over, under, over, under, over, under. So see, what you want to make sure is that they're opposites. So here my pattern is continuing, under, over, and it's the opposite of here, right? So this one's under, this one's over, this one's over, this one's under. It should always happen like that. And so that's, you just want to make sure that they're opposite. So when I get to that next round that goes above this second weft thread, it's going to be opposite of this one. You know, that's how the pattern's going to go. So I'm going to continue on till I finish off this thread, and then I'll show you how to end the thread. Now, if you are working on your weaving and you for some reason notice that they're not opposite, you know, because it should always be opposite. So for instance, right here on this warp thread, my first one was over, the one above it is under, and then the one above that is over. Like that pattern should still follow regardless. If you start noticing that your pattern is not opposite on what you're doing, go back. Somewhere around here, you must have gone under too many, like maybe two, or maybe you didn't go under enough. And so one of these in the past is messed up. And just go back, undo what you did, and then fix it, and then keep going. Again, this isn't hard. You are going to live. Don't freak out. You'll be okay. You just have to go back and fix it. And for those of you that are like, doesn't matter, it does. Your bag will fall apart, so don't do it. Now I'm getting close to the end of my thread. And just like when we started, I don't want to put any knots on this last one. Like if I can get it to like right here, that's not too bad. But I also need enough to tie. So I only have about this much. And tying knots is not my easiest thing to do. So I'm actually going to do it on the back. I'm going to go to like maybe this warp thread. I'm going to undo. And I'm going to tie my knot right there. So let me zoom in again. Now, if you can still go, it doesn't matter where you start and stop. That's one thing to also notice. It doesn't really matter. But you want to have enough thread to tie a knot because you're going to have to tie a knot to one of the warp threads as well. Okay, so let me zoom in on this. Now, what I like to do to make sure that I'm actually tying a knot on the actual warp thread, because sometimes people will tie a knot, but they won't tie it to this. And remember, just to one. You don't need to tie it to two. So how I ensure that is that I'll pick the one that the thread is already underneath it, kind of like holding it. So I'm going to get my scissors. I need to cut my needle off. Okay, so my needle's off. Now what I'm going to do is, here is my thread. Okay. And I'm going to tie a knot onto this one. And if you already kind of know how to do this, go ahead. For those of you that might struggle, all I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that warp thread is underneath it, right? I'm going to get my tail, and just like before, I'm going to cross it underneath, so like I'm pulling some of that thread that's from the back, so I'm tying it onto this one right here. I'm going to get some of this thread, I'm going to get this tail, I'm going to go underneath, I'm going to cross it, okay, make it a little X, and then this tail, I'm going to go through the loop. So I'll put it through the loop, and then I pull, pull, pull. Okay, so there's that first one, but this isn't a knot yet. This is just once, you got to do it twice. So again, get my tail. I'm going to just go to this little bit of thread right here. I'm going to go underneath. Okay, I'm just pushing that tail underneath. Okay, so it's just like making a little X. And then I'm going to get this tail and I'm going to put it through the loop. And then I pull, 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 pull. And then I'm good. Now this excess, you don't have to worry about. If it's super long and it's driving you crazy, you can trim it. But don't cut it close to the knot. Just like before, you don't want it to accidentally undo it. So I'm just going to trim my tail just a little bit. I don't need to get too crazy. So just like before, you need about 1 inch of tabby. But how do we measure that? This is where your fork comes in. Dun, dun, dun! You thought you were going to use this to eat. Well, you're not. You're using it for your project. Please pick a fork that your mom or dad are not going to get mad at you for using on your project. And also, please don't let it be dirty. That's gross. So, our fork is actually going to become our beater. Now, the beater is what helps us really get the weft threads to interlock. Because right now they're opposite. They're under, over, under, over, under, over, and then the top, it's like that opposite that's happening. Well, we also need them to like interlock a little bit more. So our beater pulls these guys down. And see, even the knot comes down. So I'm going to flip it. It's like spaghetti, but with yarn. And if you notice that your knot's not like following with the fork, just pull it down with your fingers. Now, this is the bottom of the bag. We need all of this to be nice and tight and packed down here. We don't need a gap. We want the bottom of the bag to be the bottom of the bag. So for instance, here's my other bag. We need it to be the bottom. You know, see how you can see those warp threads? Well, those are these guys down here. So we need to get this as far to the bottom as we can. Now, some of you may not want to use the fork. Some of you are like, I can just use my fingers. You can. That's fine. What tends to happen is as we continue on with weaving, getting like a nice tight weave is a little bit easier when you have the fork. It really just helps pull those down. Now be careful, because as we are pushing this weave down, you'll notice that these little guys are going to want to slip off, and they're going to be like super loose. Just be aware of that. Just make sure they're not, getting too crazy over on that end. And you're really just packing it tight. Think about your bag. Like, you want your bag to be nice and tight. You don't want any change to fall out of your bag. So sometimes I'll kind of get in here with my fingers. So see, like right here, I already have this one kind of slipping off. Just be aware of that. Just be careful. Like, sometimes I won't do the ends until it's all done, and then I'll push everything down. Okay. And so we're going to need about 1 inch. So right now this is, barely even a little bit. So again, you're going to get some more. So like, here's where I stopped. I started on this side. It doesn't matter where you start and stop. I always know I will have students that are like, okay, I stopped right here. I'm going to start right here. You can, just be careful. These knots will start to show up. If you put your knots too close together, they don't become invisible. So for instance, let's look at my other bag. You can kind of tell where those knots are. And so you're trying to blend them. You can't find all of them. Like for instance, up here, you can't really see all of my knots, but you can kind of start to tell where those knots probably are. So if you have them really, really close to each other, they're going to be even more noticeable. So if you space them out, then you're not too bad. I'll also have some students that love to start and stop on the same side. So for instance, they started on this side, they're going to start on this side again. Again, it doesn't matter. It's to preference. You decide which one you want to do. I don't care. There is a trick. There is a trick to when you start. So let me show you that right now. So here's my new piece of yarn. Just like before, I'm going to take off that. Yeah. I'm going to put my yarn through my needle, tie a knot. Once, and then twice. Okay, now I get my other end of my yarn, my other tail. And so this is where my, sorry about that. So this is where my original knot is. Again, I don't want to do the same warp thread. What's going to happen while you work on your bag is that there's going to be a lot of stress on these guys because you're going under, over, you're pulling them, you're moving them out of the way. They might even break. Some of them might snap. And I'll have a video on how to fix that. And don't worry, it's easy to fix. But same with everything. You don't want your knot to be on the same one. You don't want any one thread to hold all of those knots. So I'm just going to start over here, just like before. I'm going to go under this thread so I know I have it. Okay. Close up again. This is what we did, exactly like before. So I'm going to get my other thread, cross it over, put that tail through the loop, pull, 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 and do it one more time. Cross it over, put that tail through the loop, pull, 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 and then we're good. So again, sometimes I won't move it from being high up. Some people like to try to keep it low so they can see how much. This project is very easy. Like, it's easy to just sit and watch a movie while you work on it. You have to pay attention, but it's not difficult. So I always like don't mind just kind of moving it down later on. So again, I'm going to go to the right because that's just how my brain works. Just like before, what I have to pay attention to is where did I stop off on? So if this is the warp thread I'm starting on, I need to make sure my row is opposite. So as you can tell, the one right below is over, so that means I need to go under, under, over, under, over. So see, opposite, opposite, opposite. So I'm going to start doing this line. Now something a little crazy is going to happen on the other side. So I'm going to just fast forward that a little bit to show you. As you can see, I'm getting closer to my knot where I ended. So I'm going to stop actually right over there. So I need to go over, under, over, under, over, under. Now let me zoom in right here. So here's where the challenge is. You need to make sure that your pattern is opposite. So for instance, my one above is over, this one's under, and then it's opposite, opposite, and then opposite again. So I have over right here, under right here. The knot breaks the pattern. It breaks the pattern, so it doesn't continue on. And so what you're going to have to do is fudge a little bit. So for instance, this is under. So now my weft is going over. And then if I followed this pattern, I would go under again. But see, now it's broken. I'm going to be identical. I can't be identical right there. So what I need to do is mess with the pattern just right here. So I'm under. I'm going to go over, but I need to be over on this one as well. So I'm actually going to go over 2, just right here. Don't go over 2 all over or on your other threads, just to fix what the knot breaks and to make sure this pattern continues. So what I mean by that is this. Here I am, I'm going under. Typically for tabby, it's just 1. Over, under, over, under. I'm going to go this time over this one where the knot is and over this one. So that way the pattern continues. Now yours might be different. You might need to go under 2. It just depends. It depends on how you started, over, under. But really what you're trying to do is just get that pattern to continue on. So I had to kind of fudge it right here. Now, every time I come to this section, I'm going to have to do this. So for instance, I have 2 over. When I come back, I'm going to have 2 under because I need that pattern to repeat. Just that way it can be fixed as we continue on. I'm going to keep going on my pattern just like before. Okay. Okay. So I went under. So now when I flip, I have to go over. Over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. And now I'm coming back to a new knot. So this is where we started. This is where we started our new thread. So just like before, I have to make sure that my new weft thread is going to be opposite of what I did. Okay, so let's check. So this one's under, over, under, over, under. Okay, so this is going to be messed up as well. I need that pattern to be fixed. So let me show you guys that. Let me get a little closer in. So the pattern is fine for these two guys, right? They're opposite. They're going to be opposite. It's once I get past the knot, that's when it's going to start getting a little tricky. So this says I'm going to go over, under. If you have a different needle, something that is not filled with tape, that might be nice, but this works fine. It's just that little corner tends to like make me lose my mind. So I tend to cut that off or fold it or something. Okay, so I need to, so this all matches. Actually, no, it doesn't. Wait. I messed up right there. Ooh, look what the teacher did. Oh, wait. No, I didn't. Did I? No, it was just all in my head. Oh, I did. Oh, guys. Right there. That's a no-no. Look at that. I went under 3. I was rushing. Ooh. I'm going to have to go back and fix those. Okay, so I have to fix that because that's messing up the pattern. For those of you that are like, I'll just keep going. You might have holes. Might have holes in your bag, so just be careful. You know, this project is easy, but you still have to pay attention. So, but let me just show you this one thing. When you get back to your first knot, when you get back here, you still have to check. You have to check to make sure that this is going to be opposite. So just like we did in the back, I'm under, over, and I should be over on this one. So I'm going to go over 2 and then start my normal pattern again. Okay. I wonder if that's why my pattern's messed up. Way to go, Miss Artunde. So just like before, I went over 2 right here because I needed to fix it. I need this pattern to start up again. And that's what you're going to do. Typically, it happens at a knot because the pattern is fine here and then that knot breaks it up. So it changes it. So you'll just have to always just double check. So on that other one, you're going to need to either go under 2 or over 2 like I did. Just depends on what works with yours. That bugs me. I have to go and fix this. Miss Artunde, why weren't you paying attention? Because I was trying to do things fast. That's why. Yeah, I'm going to go back and fix that. Well, actually, this isn't even my bag. This is the tabby weave. And you're going to keep doing this until you get that inch. Now, remember, guys, don't be overwhelmed. Put on a movie. Put on some music. Work for about 20 minutes and then give it a rest. You need about an inch of tabby. This won't take long. It's just tedious. You know, you guys are going to be okay. So as you can see right here, I am almost up to my line for my woven bag. The only thing I didn't do was, unlike my other loom that I was showing you guys how to do this weave on, I didn't push my yarn all the way down to the bottom. The reason I didn't do that is because these ends, they're going to start popping off. And I didn't want to have to worry about that while I was doing the rest of my bag. So at the very, very end, when I'm all done with my whole weave, then I'll bring these all down to the bottom. But not until then. You know, they don't need to go all the way there. You know, I'll go a little bit above my line because I know this is going to go a little bit further. But let me just show you really quickly my basket weave. So again, it blends in with my my warps, and that's fine. That's, kind of what you want to happen. And you can start to see the weave going in and out. Again, I just kind of did this with my fingers, but really that fork, like, as much as some students will say that it doesn't really matter what you use as your beater, you really just want to get that blended in. You're still going to see some of that style. That's kind of how this weave works. Again, this is woven, so you're going to see some of it. But you really, really just want to compress it. You really want to push that down so that way it's just interlocking on the bag. And that's really what you care about. So this is the tabby weave. And this time I didn't mess up on my bag. I was paying attention this time. And I have a little bit more to go. Don't rush. Don't rush through this project. Again, this project isn't hard. It can get frustrating, like when I messed up on my other loom. You have to go back and kind of fix that, and that can get very frustrating if you do that a lot. You have to pay attention, but it's really simple. So if you do about 20 minutes a day and just steadily work, that's really what I want to see. Now, today you're going to start this and go back to the agenda, because I will ask for proof that your inch is done and that you started on your next portion in a few days. So just look at the agenda, you'll send me a photo, and then we're good. See you guys later. So that's how you do the tabby weave. Now remember, you're only doing that first inch. For my bag, I'm actually going to continue the tabby up to the top. For those of you that have interesting or unique designs like my bag does, I'll have a separate video on how to do that, because you're not just doing bands of color, you're stopping and starting a little differently. Guys, I don't want you to be overwhelmed. Again, check out our agenda for this week. You should be working on your bag slowly but steadily. So if you're doing about 20 minutes a day, then you're doing fine. You'll be okay. Well, bye. Have fun weaving. And you will see the next weaves: Raya, Egyptian knot, tabby, and buttonhole. I'm going to wait. You guys aren't there yet. But those three, I'm going to have videos up just for those particular weaves, because not all of you are using all of them. So you don't need to watch a whole long video for that. So keep a lookout on Classroom. I will have those videos up and you will be able to get started. Bye, guys.